Hello, everyone. Another episode of Natives Podcast. I'm Harry MacArthur here with Bob Thornton and a wonderful friend of mine, Scott Fay, and I just love him and his family. And I know how great he is because of his mom and dad, so I kind of gauge him on that. And when you hear his story, you're just going to love it. And we've ridden the ups and downs with him the last 25, 30 years, and it's just been fascinating. So hopefully he tells us all about it, and here we go.
All right, my friend, we're underway. I've known Scott for a long time now, and we've become very close. Scott is one of the people that I go out of my way if he's speaking somewhere, if he's sharing, and I'll call it.
Or if I'm stuck on the railroad tracks.
All if he's stuck on the railroad tracks in his golf cart with his wife, and I jump out of my truck and I bowl the golf cart out of the middle of the intersection.
Yes, you do.
So, Scott, why don't you start off, if you're comfortable, with just telling us a little bit about your childhood, your family, where you grew up, and how things were.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's hard to know where to start. I have to start with this before I say anything else. It's out of the spirit of gratitude. It is so good to be in a place called Hobe Sound, Florida. Mm-hmm. You know, you've heard my take on that. Of all the places in the world we could live, the U.S. has still got to be the best place in the world. And all the places in the U.S., Florida is a wonderful place to be. And all the places of Florida, Martin County is very special. And as far as I'm concerned, in Martin County, Hobe Sound is the cherry on the top. So we arguably live in the very best place in the world. Let's start with that.
Hoo-ah.
Yeah. And just before we came up here to what I call the upper room up here I saw Mark Gaylord down, and years ago, Mark helped me get started, and we were talking, and he was laughing about, that's when he began to practice law. And I said, yeah, you practiced on me. So, coming to Harry's, I call this our town center. It's Harry and the Natives, but it's really the town center. And I'm just grateful to be here. My background is I'm the son of a preacher man, and I'd love to tell. We could spend however many minutes we're going to spend today just telling you my dad's story. It's amazing. And I'll share with just how average, how unimpressive I am. But there's one thing I did get an unfair advantage, and I won the lottery when I got the parents, Rowan and Judy Fay. Nothing else really matters beyond that because our home was a home of service. Our home was a home with a leadership environment. They loved to have leaders come into our home and speak in my dad's churches, and they were not afraid of someone else being stronger or brighter or more keen on something that would add value to us kids. It was an environment rich in principle. And not rich in economics, but rich in principle. And I'm glad for both, because it was the lack of a lot of money, quite frankly, of really kind of any money. When Dad left the business world and went into ministry, his first church, he often says that, they paid him $45 a week and all the milk we could drink, because there was a farmer in the town, and he would supply the milk in these big jars, these big wide-mouthed jars, and if you let them set, the cream would come to the top. Mom would scoop out the cream and make all kinds of stuff with that, and we grew up on that. And every fall, it was this little small dairy, and Walt Lum would kill the oldest cow in the herd and split the meat with the preacher. An old milk cow. It doesn't get any tougher, right? We'd be sitting there trying to cut that meat, and Dad would say, "Eat up, kids. It's a lot tougher where there isn't any." And so we just, but I'm grateful for that, And so in elementary school, I'd check out. I'd love to go back and see if those books are still around. Any book I could find on mini bikes or go-karts or anything with a motor on it, I would check them out repeatedly, because I wasn't bright enough to get it the first time. And I would dream. I remember laying in bed at night thinking, how can I get that, like that desire to have something that I wanted, right? And that that's where I think all good things start, is a desire. And I'm so grateful for that. And so the time came when I couldn't buy a mini bike. I couldn't buy a golf cart, a go-kart, but there was a Simplicity lawnmower, 7.5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton engine lawnmower. And I convinced my dad that would be a good idea for me to buy, that I could make some money. And I got that mower, and then I bought a little walk behind. And so I said, I've been chasing a mower since I was 12. And what I do professionally, a 12-year-old kid could do. So the bar is pretty low. And I've been doing that ever since. And that's really how I got started in a little town, they call it a one-horse town. I think it was a half-horse town. It had a flashing yellow light in front of the volunteer fire department. That's the most exciting thing that ever happened in our town, was that yellow flashing light. But in the process of that, and picking up yards, and then eventually having a couple kids work with me, my dad also had an antique shop that also sold used stuff on consignment. It was called the Junk Shop, and there were times Dad had an old retired guy that was working there, and when he couldn't, then Dad would say, you got to go down and run the junk shop. So I'd go down. Run it meant I just had to be there and make sure nobody walked out the front door with something. But it was great training, with that aspect, and saw Dad buy and sell and do some things to supplement the income, and that's how I got started. We moved when I was in 9th grade to Utica, New York. And shortly thereafter, I was old enough to then drive. As a kid, had to just take my little riding mower around town, right? But now I'm in the big time. Now I've got a 3/4-ton Chevy pickup truck, and now we're going somewhere. And built a little business that I sold my senior year, and when I came to Hobe Sound. The thing that brought me to good old Hobe Sound was a trip my senior year in high school. Wes Holden, who is on staff over at Hobe Sound Ministries, was pastoring another church near my dad's. And he brought a carload of guys down my senior year in high school to go to Hobe Sound. They had a welcome week for the college. And remember, I'm just a guy that cuts grass and not particularly bright, not particularly anything. Like I'm just so average, But I jumped in this car. We had a whole lot of fun coming to Florida. And got here and had some friends that I'd met at youth camp that were here. And I just like, well, that's the next move. I'll go go to college in Hobe Sound. And I came to little Hobe Sound. And when you think about growing up in upstate New York and how I ended up in a small town in Florida, I mean, our roots go back to the Adirondacks, several generations, and all kinds of stories about that. I always thought I'd live in the mountains. I love the mountains. I don't like to be where it's flat. I don't like to be where it's hot. Like, none of this makes any sense. But you both know that my faith is very important to me. And I really believe that God's hand was on my life. And he used some of the strangest things to get me, that crooked road that gets you right to where you're supposed to be. It's just amazing. And his hand was on me. And I got here and I'm unloading my Chevy pickup truck with a push mower, a weed eater, rakes and barrels. Other guys are rolling in Camaros and, cool cars. And I'm in a pickup truck, rusted out pickup truck at that. And Dave Green here in town, his family and my family had known each other for a long time. And he said, I heard you're here, and I just want you to know this is the busiest time of year for me right now. And I've got a couple of yards that if you want to use them for a few months until we get to the winter season, you can. Once it becomes winter, I'm going to need all the work I've got because it levels out. But you could take those, you charge the customer, whatever, and you can use those to get started. And I used that and began to do the, neighbor thing and who knows who, and began to build something and try to keep this to what's relevant for today because I can go down a rabbit hole real quick. But I did that all through school, and that turned into Hobe Sound Landscape, and I would go down to the only place I knew that sold plants, and it was a company on County Line Road called Rood Landscape. And they had a wholesale nursery, and I got to know Don Williams before I got to know anybody at Rood, and eventually got to know Mr. Rood. And it was just a place for me to buy plant material. And they were a big help to me, and they elevated me and tried to get me to join FNGLA and get my certification. So I did that. They were a great influence in my life, but that's all I knew about Rood. And then when I graduated from college, I moved back up to New York and said, okay, now I've been cutting grass, so now it's time to get a real job. And I had 7 jobs in 3.5 years. And I couldn't find anything.
None of them fit.
That got me. It fit and did. It just didn't. It just didn't. There's just nothing there. And I tried everything. And in upstate New York, in Utica, New York, it's back there was a time when it was a thriving town, but that time has long since passed. And so even if I wanted to do landscaping, it wasn't that kind of environment. And I got so desperate that I called back down to Rood Landscape and talked to Don Williams, the manager of Wholesale Nursery. At that time, Tommy Aiello was there, and Dan Russell was there, Bert Clattenburg, all names you guys know. And I called Don and said, hey, I want to move back to Florida. Is there any room for me on your staff? He said, well, let me talk to Mr. Rood, and we'll get back to you. And they called back a couple days later. And this is how it went down. They flew me down for an interview. I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. And for 2 days, I spent interviewing, seeing the work. Mr. Rood introduced me to the leadership team, took me out to a lunch where they were all together. I'll never forget, we all held hands in this restaurant, and Mr. Rood prayed like a house on fire. And then we had, it was just that kind of environment. Mr. Rood was such a strong man of faith. I said, but this is going really well. This is awesome. And obviously they need me. I was, you know where this is going, and I'm
killing it.
Yeah, I'm killing it, man. They are in awe, as they should be, and yeah.
Been there.
And Mr. Rood is in his 70s, and Tommy and these guys are great guys, but they need some help, and I'm sure he's going to exit stage left. I'm not saying they're going to hand me the keys to the kingdom, but they're going to hand me some keys. I know that. Yeah, they sure did. So it came time to talk to Mr. Rood. And we went into his little office, which was also the Riverside Memorial Cemetery office. And he sat at his desk, and he always insisted you sit in a chair next to him. You didn't sit across the table from him. He wanted to do one of these. And he said something, guys, I'll never forget. He said, Scotty, I believe you have something to bring to the table. And I'm like, yeah, bring it. And he said with passion and conviction, he said, I believe if you're willing, the table has something to give to you, but you've got to be willing to go through the process. Now my excitement's starting to
the roller coaster.
The process. I wasn't looking for a process. I'm looking.
You were looking for promotion.
I'm
not
looking
process.
for promotion. That's it. We'll take the promotion, not the process. He said, "I'd like you to be the maintenance man in our nursery, and what that looks like is pulling weeds and trimming podocarpus hedges. And we can pay you $8.50 an hour, and we'd love to have you do that." And I'm thinking, you just flew me down here. 2 days of interviews. Like, that's an ad in the paper, and you can get somebody to be the maintenance. And I had some other thoughts that I won't repeat.
They weren't quite as spiritual.
No, not nearly as spiritual. But I was fortunately, and I think this is important, I was so hungry. I was so desperate. I was so at the end of myself and so wanted to start a new trajectory. And thank God I was that low. If I hadn't been that low, I never would have taken this opportunity where I could bring something to the table. And little did I know how much that table would eventually bring to me. Had no idea. And that was like prophetic, and I didn't even know it. And so I moved my little family. I had one daughter, one child at that time. We moved back to Florida, lived in a little duplex that I could barely afford in up in Hobe Ridge Ave. And I went to work and brown bagged it. And once a month we'd get pizza. That was the big, highlight of the month. And it was just nose to the grindstone. And it was a long process. And in time, I was able to see some progress and eventually joined the mid-level leadership at Rood Landscape. And then the real opportunity came that really changed the trajectory. And Greg Lawrence had a company called Treasure Coast Services, which was predominantly a irrigation company. And he had moved away and left the company to run itself, and it wasn't working out. And so he called me. He said, if you'll take the debt, you can have the company. And it was $100,000 of debt. I didn't know there was $100,000 in the world, let alone in one company.
Let alone owe someone.
Owe somebody. Another time in my life where I was so desperate, I was enjoying my job, but I realized that, if I wanted to take control of my destiny, if I really wanted to go where I wanted to go, and the few skills that I had to really harness them, I said yes. And I took a 50% cut in pay because that's all I could pay myself. And I went to, and I did Treasure Coast, and we began to build an irrigation company that took distressed companies and rolled them together. I'm not smart enough to take a great company and do anything with, but I can fix a broken one in some degree. And so we began to do that. And in 2007, two things came that, again, changed the trajectory of my life. I had been working with Tom Balling. He was running a very large landscape company in Palm Beach, and we've gone through a few hurricanes together, and that's a whole nother series of stories, but we got to work together. And then I put in a huge irrigation system for him at Century Village. It was a very difficult situation, and we got through it, and we worked so well together. I said, Tom, you got to come and work for me. He said, I already have a job. I'm not doing that. But if you ever want a partner, call me. I said, I don't do partnerships. So we were done. And I got to a point where I wanted to do some other things with some other folks and again expand, and got hungry again. There's a theme there. When you're satisfied, you're never going to grow. Satisfaction sounds like a wonderful word, but it's an awful word. When you're satisfied, there's no desire to grow. And one of the best days of my life that has blessed me over and over and over was to get desperate enough where I needed a partner. And Tom and I have been 50-50 partners now for 19 years. And that's not supposed to work. Somebody's supposed to be more equal than the other. We're as different as night and day. He's a golfer. I don't know which end of the club you're supposed to grab. He, for years, drove that cute little Bronco. I drive a manly Ram truck, and I always say that to him. He's country club, and I'm just country. But it works. And he's become not only a great partner, he's become a dear friend. I've trusted him with my life, and he has the same. And it's been an incredible journey. And I think back, and then it was just a few months later, he left that landscape company to come and join my irrigation company because he said, I've been doing landscape. I want to get away from landscape. And just a couple of months later, Rood Landscape had hit the skids. They were having a really tough time through a series of a lot of things. And Bert Clattenburg called me and said, man, it's not looking good for us. And we had been taking distressed companies and rolled them in. And it's not because I'm that brilliant. It's that we just had this. We had a lot of things that we could eliminate if we bought another company because we already had them, right? And so the economics worked, and we worked out a deal with Bert that was good for him and good for us. And now Tom Balling, 3 months later, after joining me, is back in the landscape business. And there's a piece of this that I really want to, I think it demonstrates not only the value of not being satisfied, but there's a piece of this story that works in the background that I'd be remiss if I didn't share, and that is how important my faith is to me. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about a denomination. I'm talking about a faith in knowing that God has this thing for us and that He wants to be involved in our lives in a real personal way, not just a mythical, not just a big universal energy source, but he desires to have a relationship. And one of my favorite memories is we had, Harry, maybe you remember, Bob, we used to be over at on the property we have on US 1 next to Napa.
Yep.
And it's a little building. It's been there for 100 years, and it's small on the inside because it's big on the outside. There's just no room there, and we had maxed out. And the county was getting after me for parking trucks everywhere that they're not supposed to be, and I was getting love letters from them every month.
Love letters.
I couldn't find a place because in our business we need small brick and mortar and lots of parking. And you when you develop a piece of commercial property, you build buildings and put in necessary parking, but you don't. So I couldn't find anything, and I looked everywhere, and I couldn't. And I made offers. I just not. And oh, by the way, I didn't have any money. That was another issue that kind of was. I had no cash, none, zero. And and then I got a call so to preface this. In 1 week, this is what happened. My daughter Debbie came to see me, came into my office at the house. And she was a teenager, young teenager at that time. And she hugged me and she ran her fingers through my hair and told me what a wonderful dad that I was, and then needed $20.
I was going to say the hook was coming. I felt that one.
And that wasn't her first rodeo. It wasn't my first experience with her. I knew it was coming, but she told me she loved me, and she just laid it on thick and hugged me, and and she knows I like it when all that, and she did all that. And I happened to have only a 50 in my pocket, and I gave her a 50. And she began to cry. And she was overwhelmed. And I said, honey, you've been awesome. You haven't caused me any heartache. I love where you're going and what you're doing. And and we had one of those moments. You can't plan it. You can't make it. You can't fabricate it. It just happened. And she left. And again, this shows you how pathetic I am. She left, and I'm thinking, man, I'm a pretty good dad. That's just being transparent. And then I remembered some of the training that I've had, and being raised in a family of faith. And one of the principles of faith is understanding. God says in the scriptures, it says, you're an earthly father and you think you're good. I'm your heavenly Father. I love you more than you can imagine, more than you can even think or imagine. But I've created you for fellowship. And call this whatever you want, had this sense or felt this feeling or this conversation where I felt God was saying to me, I just want you to hug me. I just want you to run your fingers through my hair, so to speak, and tell me that I want you to tell me I'm a good father, because I want to be in that relationship. Just like Debbie spoke to you, I want you to speak to me. And when you do, you ask for a 20, I'll give you a 50. And I couldn't get away from that, guys, for a couple of days. Now, I'd been looking for a piece of property, and I couldn't find anything. And I knew Wilfram Construction was out at the property that we're on Bridge Road. And I'd gone to Ron Wilson and said, man, because I knew Ron was thinking about closing things down. I said, when you close, I'd really like to buy this property. And I tried to get Mrs. Timon. She was the owner, and I couldn't get past the gatekeeper. It was like, no matter, because that property was perfect for what I wanted. I couldn't get there. And that Friday afternoon, this is before we had the technology we have today, Ron Wilson was trying to get a hold of me. Finally got a hold of my wife and said, tell Scotty to call me. I called him. He said, Mrs. Timon says she's going to sell that property, and I wanted you to know. He said, I'm not interested. And so I called Mrs. Timon, and she said, son, if you're interested, you'll come up right away. So I went right there, and I sat down with a lady that I could never get in touch with. And 2 weeks before that, we had gone to a real estate seminar, Steve Addison and I, and I learned some principles that helped me with negotiation. One of the first things was, before you talk about the business, talk about each other. Like that, maybe that's common sense, but I needed to know this. So I sat down and began to work through all that. And I just see the the process going, because that real estate seminar cost me more than I really felt I should spend. So I sat down with Mrs. Timon. She told me what she wanted for the property. I asked her if she would hold any paper. She said no. And I'll just tell you, I don't know if this is a smart thing to say in a podcast, but she said it's $1.1 million. And I said, I'll take it. You know, I didn't have $1, let alone 1.1 of them, million of them. I said, I'll take it. And asked if she would hold some paper. And she said, no, I can't do that. So I left. And I'm like, okay. And she said, you'll need to come back Monday morning. I want a contract on my desk, and I want to know how you're going to come up with $1.1 million. I'll see you Monday morning. I said, okay, I'll be here. I did not know any more than what I'm telling you right now. And I got down the road about 15 minutes, and she called me, and she said, I don't understand this, but I've got this feeling I need to hold the paper for you. And I just want you to know that means I'm going to have to pay off. I have a small mortgage again. I'm going to have to pay that mortgage off to do this. But if you can come up with 20%, I'll hold the paper. I said, that's awesome. Hung up the phone, and then I figured 20% of 1.1. Okay, I still got a mountain.
$220,000, baby.
Still got a mountain to climb. And I said, okay, I'll see you Monday morning. And that weekend, guys, and this is maybe more detail than you need, but I just want you to know how big God, when he does something so big that you can't take the credit for, because that property ended up being a game changer for me. So here I am. I've made this deal and still don't know what I'm going to do. And that weekend, I'm chairing a missions event at my church. I'm the platform manager or MC or whatever you want to call it. I'm hosting the special speaker at my house. Like, there's no time to plan. There's no time to call and raise money. There's no time for any of that. All Saturday and all Sunday.
You're serving.
That's it. That's it, Bob. And I'd committed to that. And when you make a commitment, you follow through. And I'm like, I ask, and now and if you're listening to this, watching this, or if your back's up against the wall, it's a great place to be. When there's something that's so big, there's no way you can do it. And when you've got to turn it over, it's like when all else fails, you read the directions, right? When it's all else fails, you pray. When all else fails, you lean on God. I just don't know how I'm going to do this. Well, got through all of that. 4:00 Monday morning, I'm over my office next to Napa, and I'm going through the binders from that real estate conference that I just was with Steve Addison, that when we went together, and I'm trying to all that. And 6:00, the door opens, and a guy walks in that we had hired like a week or two before. He came to the Hobe Sound Chamber and said, I'm retired. I came down here to play golf. I played golf 6 days in a row, and I think I'm going to shoot myself. So he said, his name is John Lyons. And John said, I just want to work with some young guys that want to go somewhere. I've been an exec, and I don't need the money. I just want to pour in some young guys. And I think it was Beth at the time. But anyways, whoever our director was, I'm sorry, I wish I remembered exactly, but I think it was, said, go see Scotty. He would want your kind of people. And so he had come in. I said, I don't know what we're going to do with you, John, but yes. And that was 2 weeks before. So John's on. So he walks in at 6:00. Now he's known me for 2 weeks. And he walks in and I said, man, John, good to see you. You can't believe we're going to be able to get out of this little crammed up space and move. And he said, man, that's great. I didn't tell him any other detail. Nothing. I just said, that's what we got to do. And then we got the option. And he walks out and he spins around and he goes back in and he leans against my door and he says, Scott, I don't know your situation and maybe this isn't appropriate, but just for whatever it's worth, I sold my house up in New York. And he said, I'm sitting on a lot of money in a savings account that's not giving me any interest. I don't know if you need any money, but I would be happy to loan you whatever you need, and we'll work it out. You can't make this stuff up. And you can't take the credit for it. I mean, it's just like, there's, and again, it's all these people. At 9 o'clock I called Mark Gaylord. At night, as soon as I knew he answers the phone himself. And I said, Mark, I've got an opportunity to do this, but I need some contract. He said, by the time you get in your truck, you come to my office, by the time you get here, it'll be printed out. That's easy. I got it. I went over to his office, picked up the contract, walked into Miss Timon's office, said, here's the contract. Here's how I'm going to finance the down payment. And here's what I'm going to do. She said, come on back at 5 o'clock and we'll close. We closed in a day on the contract, 30 days because we didn't have a bank involved. We were moving in. And the part of my story that I forgot was that night after Debbie came in to see me on Wednesday. Thursday, I was out at my church doing some serving again, and I came home that night and I sat in front of the gate on Bridge Road and I said, okay, Father, you said, ask for a 20, I'll give you a 50. I really would like this property. That was on Thursday. Ron called me on Friday, sat with Mrs. Timon on Saturday, and Monday we had a signed contract. And I can't take any of the credit except to be available. There's a scripture that says the footsteps of a faithful man are ordered by God. And I don't pray that God will order my footsteps. I pray that I'll be faithful. And if I'll be faithful, then he will order the footsteps. Of all the stories I wanted to share with you this morning, I think that is, there's several times when God intervened and saved me from my own stupidity.
Been there, done that.
But that's really so. It's such a picture of what I believe where faith intersects business, and it's always right to do the right thing.
That's not incredible. That is how it's supposed to work. And one of the big takeaways for me is every time that you were uncomfortable, you were ready to grow. And unfortunately, our society is in a point where everyone wants comfort.
Yes.
No one wants uncomfortable. No one wants to work. No one wants to suffer. And when you're comfortable, you're in a comfortable rut.
Yeah.
And what I say to people is, all a rut is, it's a grave with the ends kicked out.
That's right. That's right.
And you're ready to be buried.
Yeah.
And
you're
that
dead.
are not,
you just haven't made it official.
Yes. Those that are not busy born are busy dying.
Yeah.
And there you were with your back against the wall.
Yeah.
You knew what you wanted. You didn't know how to do it, but you were pressed into service. You had made a commitment. You lived up to that commitment. And he said, don't worry, Scott, I got you.
Yeah.
And he did.
He did. And then the mentorships and the friendships and the relationships, you hear stories about, so-and-so's a self-made man. They don't exist. There's no such thing as a self-made man. And every time, Harry, I'm in your establishment, there's such a sense of community here. And I can point to that person, and that person, and that person, and that person. I'm grateful for, when you get older, names drop. The gentleman that introduced me to Tom Balling, that was such a significant introduction, a friendship. And I look at all of the folks who have become community here. I'm so glad Martin County says character counts. I would like to have even bigger letters, community counts. I don't know if it's bigger than character, but it's right up there,
Another thing is, when you were working up there on US 1, you needed a box truck. Do you remember that story?
You're going to have to remind me.
Well, you needed a box truck, and you called the people with the box truck, and they got one, but it's got the American flag all over it.
Oh, no. I'll tell you about now I know the American flag.
Okay.
No. So, so there have been times I needed, the trucks came. I think we've got two different stories blended there because another really good friend was helping us with Bergen de Vosta back in the day.
Yeah.
And he had put a group together that would helped Bergen DeVos to do their budget, and the idea was he did the management company, and somebody else did the landscaping. At that time, I did the irrigation, and we gave all the numbers, and they would know how to build their maintenance proposals and their maintenance fees based on all that. And we got to do the work for the first year. And once the developer was gone, if we didn't earn the right to stay, and we were growing like crazy, and so we were buying trucks. At one point, we were buying a truck every month. We took a truck delivery of a brand new box truck, September of 2001. It had just come in, and we didn't get it lettered yet. And then 9/11 happened. And we totally changed the scheme for that truck and put United We Stand on one side and In God We Trust on the other side with a big American flag. And I wished I had, once, we keep a truck for 10 years or a certain number of miles, and then we flip it. I wished we had kept that truck.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a truck that would should be in the Hobe Sound Christmas parade every year.
There you go. There you go.
There was another time when my back was against the wall and we were out of money in an incredible way. At that point, I was still running the business out of my house on Pinecone Lane, and my office manager called me and said, I need you to come in. You need to sit down. We got to talk. That's never good.
No.
It's Friday afternoon, about 1:00 in the afternoon. I came in, and Rodney said, listen, man, here's the deal. Because I was out singing and dancing and selling, and I hired him so he would take care of that, and I would take care of this, because I couldn't get bogged down and sing and dance. I wasn't that good of a singer or a dancer anyway. And so Rodney was doing the best he could, but he was making the best with what we had, and we were struggling. I mean, we had just taken over. Maybe we were in it for a year, and I don't know, 5 or 6 guys at that time, or I don't remember how many. But here's the part I do remember. When I sat down, he said, Mobile's called and they've shut off the gas cards. The bank has called and we're overdrawn in the checking account. Today is Friday, payday. We have no money for payroll. And our accounts receivable are 20 grand, but our accounts payable are 40. We're upside down, 2 to 1.
Aside from that, how is your day going?
Yeah. Other than that, things are great, man. There's a bluebird in every tree, and we're just kicking tail. And I said, well, Rodney, I'm not a quick thinker, but I don't think I can afford you. So I appreciate your help, man. God bless you, but you're going to have to, for the sake of your family and mine, you're going to have to find something else to do. So he packed up his stuff and he left. And I left that little office in the front of that house where my mom and dad now live, and I went in the back in the bedroom, and I laid across the bed. Being a man of faith, I felt like God, he's answered other prayers. So the prayer I prayed was, God, take me out with a heart attack, because I can't take the embarrassment. I have failed. There were several people who thought I was nuts to take over this company with the debt that it had. This will never work. There was irrigation contractors that said, you can't do service. You got to do construction. And we were all service. You can't do it. And that was like saying, sick them to a dog. If you can't, then we're going to show we can. And I was all about showing the world what could be done. And now everybody was right. I shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done service. And I should all over myself. And I laid across that bed and begged God to take me out with a heart attack. And I waited for him to do that. And 15 minutes later, nothing happened.
You were still laying there.
Did I pay the phone bill? So that's not going to work. So I went over to a friend who is now up in Tennessee. He's in his 90s, and he could pass any time. But I went over to see Sonny Lawrence. And I poured out my heart to him and said, Sonny, this is where I am. And I got to have some help. Can you loan me some money? And I told him what I just told you. And he looked at me. I'll never forget this, guys. And he said to me, Scotty, I love you. I have the money. I actually have it in cash here. He was building a house. Today I own that house. But at that point, he was building his retirement house. And he said, I'm building the house, and I have, we could go back, and his wife is sitting there, we could give you as much as you wanted if you, but he said, I love you too much for that. there's a reason that 9 out of 10 businesses fail. It's because when they get to these hard points, they quit. And you're not going to quit. I'm not going to let you quit. And I'm not going to let you take an easy pass either. That's not going to help you. You're going to drive a stake in the ground, and you're going to get through this, and you're never going to come back to this again. You're going to have other challenges, but this isn't going to be one of them. You're never going to have this again. And at that point, I had never missed a payroll. I somehow managed to keep things together, but it was all, the yogurt was hitting the fan, and I thought it was done. And so here's what you're going to do. You're going to leave here, and those people you said owe you money, you're going to call them, and you're going to swallow your pride and say, I'm coming by today. You got to give me something. I don't care. You just got to give me something because you're going to tell them you're in a bad way. And you're going to go to everybody you can until you can right-size your account at the bank and send mobile enough money and make your payroll. And you need to get out of here because you got to go do that now. And do all that. And then on Monday, you're going to call everybody that you owe and say, I can't pay you for 90 days. I'm in a bad way. But if you don't put the screws to me, you will get paid, but you're not going to get anything from 90 days. And I'm going to call you every 30 days and let you know how I'm coming on the plan. You're going to take all the responsibility. Nobody's going to call you looking for money because you're going to call them. And you're going to and you're going to under-promise and you're going to over-deliver. And he just like, boop, 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 like that, like grabbed me by the neck and said, now go, get out of here. And I left thinking, he's got my salvation in the safe. But what he gave me was
far more valuable
than that. And again, that back against the wall. And thankfully, and now today at the size of our business, I can't imagine if we were upside down 2-to-1 with payables and receivables. I don't know that there's enough faith in the world for that. So,
what's it, 180 employees?
Something like
that. Yeah.
Wow.
A lot different from 6.
God is good.
No, my first business was a flooring business, and it grew and grew, and I was owed so much money. And I stopped at my dad's house, and I used to go talk to my dad. My dad never had any input. He just would sit there, and he said most of the time he didn't even know what I was talking about. So very, very simple guy. But I was grinding, and I owed everyone, and I had payroll coming, and I had never missed a payroll. And I'm like, okay, God, what am I going to do? So I stop at my dad's house, and we're at the kitchen table, and I'm going on and on and on. And so my dad says, you know what, Bob? I've got some money put aside. He says, I can help you out. Now, when I got married, my mom and dad gave me a check for $25 and a stained glass thing we put in the kitchen window. That was it. I did not come from the silver spoon.
Right.
So I said, well, Dad, wow, that's incredible. And he says, so how much do you need? And I said, right around $300,000. And he said, well, what could you get by with? And I said, probably 30,000. He said, I got about $2,000 saved.
Yeah.
But
man.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I had no choice. Back against the wall,
right.
Trust and faith, and I started calling people.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I got through that, and I was never, probably the same as you, I was never in that position again.
Yes.
Because God works with broken people, doesn't he?
Once you really find that the stove is hot, like they said it is, you don't ever want to touch it again.
No, you become a very good saver. I really don't need, I can rent that. I don't need to own it yet.
Yeah, you learn a lot of lessons. And I've made a whole host of mistakes since then, but I haven't made that one.
There you go. Same.
I've often heard people say to John Maxwell, man, I'd love to do what you do. He said, of course you would. The question is, do you want to do what I did
exactly
to get here? Right?
Exactly.
It's a journey, right? And again, why is all this relevant? One, it's a great way to thank a whole lot of people. And when I heard Harold's podcast and Eric Wessel's podcast, you realize this is an incredible community, and there's so many people I can't even begin to list them all that have made a contribution. And then, of course, I want to give thanks, to my Lord and Savior, and I also, as much as anything, anybody listening to this call that's like if somebody's living high and going great, you probably don't need to listen to all this. But if your back is against the wall, and I just want you to know, there's a way through. There is a way through. You just can't give up. You cannot give up.
I think all three of us can testify to that because we've all been there.
Yeah.
I don't know about Harry. He's kind of skated. If looks could kill, I wouldn't be here anymore.
The problem is if you start telling stories about him, he'll start telling stories about us.
Yeah, he knows where the bodies are.
Yeah.
Scott, I had the privilege of, I believe I was at the Hobe Sound Chamber office, and they have a bunch of racks there. And there was a book, Discovering Your Sweet Spot. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I noticed the name of the author. You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah. If I have a message to give, I really believe that if you can have the awareness to understand the power of living in the sweet spot, it can be a game changer. And where that comes from is if you've ever hit the ball with a bat, a club, or a tennis racket, and you connected on the sweet spot, it's unbelievable. It has a special sound, it has a special feel, and here's the kicker: you get extraordinary results with a lot less effort. It's not how hard. It's all about timing and the placement, and there's a lot of things that come together when you connect on the sweet spot of the bat, golf club, or a tennis racket. You don't even have to look. You know where that ball's going. And the first time that it happens by luck. I remember the reason it's such a thing with me. I remember as a kid we're playing softball, and one day I connected with that ball, and it's wow. And that
feel
sound, you feel it, and you don't even have to look except you're like, really? I did that? And you send the ball. And then what happens as a kid is the more you play it, the more it happens, but it has nothing to do with skill yet. It's just a numbers game, right? And that's why we say the harder you work, the luckier you get, okay? Because if you work hard enough, even the blind squirrel catches the nut, right? Gets the nut, right? So but the true professionals, they find out the science and what's involved in connecting where to hit that ball on the bat or golf club or tennis, and the speed. They make a science of it. So what does it have to do with us? Well, I believe that if you take 3 concentric circles and put those 3 things together, that you can find the sweet spot. So the first circle is your purpose, knowing who you're designed to be. I don't know if you ever thought about this or not, but we talk about DNA. If we found a piece of hair in here, we would know out of the 4 of us whose that was. In fact, we would know with clarity out of the 7 or so billion people on the planet who it belonged to. And we can even go back into history and it's crazy in a strand of hair. If God put that much DNA scripting, that's more specific even than a Social Security number. If he put that much DNA in a strand of hair, how much do you think he put in your personality, your personhood, your gifting? It's unique. Nobody before and nobody after will be like Bobby Thornton. Thank God.
True story.
No, but so that's your purpose, knowing who you're designed. That's the factory setting. You unplug this equipment, plug it back in, whatever it goes to, the factory setting. You have a factory setting. And sometimes we alter those things. And based on people's expectations, based on a lot of other things, we get away from our factory setting. And I just think it's so important to know who you are designed to be. You can't be like anybody else. Comparison's the thief of joy, and that's a whole nother discussion. Who you're designed to be. Passion is what you love to do. And there's things that I love to do. There's a lot of things that I love to do. But that's what drives me. And then the third circle is plan. What do you want to have? What do you want? What do you really, really want? I think it's one of the most important questions we can ask. You wouldn't just jump on an airplane and they ask where you're going. Wherever the pilot wants to go. I don't care. You've got a destination in mind. But in life, we seldom or often don't have that destination. So if you could take who you're designed to be, and there's a lot of things you could be, and the things you love to do, and out of all the things you love to do, and there's a lot of things you'd love to have, but if you would put those circles together like in a Venn diagram and really focus on where they intersect, like if it's something I'm designed to do and I love to do it and it gets me closer to what I want to have, then that's what we should say yes to, which means we should probably only say yes 10% of the time and say no 90% of the time if we want to live in the sweet spot. Why do we want to live in this? Because I want to live in the spot where it has a special sound. That's harmony. It has a special feel. That's when I'm in my groove. And where we get extraordinary results with a lot less effort, that's what I want to have. And I see people working really, really hard, but they're not working according to their purpose, and they're not working according to their passion, and they're working so hard. And you're like, man, so if a dumb buddy like me can chase a lawnmower for 40 years and be completely not satisfied, but fulfilled by chasing a mower. Remember, it's the oldest profession in the world, which isn't what you think it is.
I didn't think it was landscaping.
No. See? No, the oldest profession in the world happened in the garden.
Oh.
They were gardeners. And if it wasn't for Eve taking a bite of that apple, you would be a gardener too, because we would all be there, but they got kicked out. So you need to thank Eve the next time you stop to think about it.
And your landscaper.
And thank your landscaper.
Well, the one thing I loved about the book is, first of all, a lot of simple guys sitting around the microphones today. And all of you that know us know how simple we truly are. But you took chasing a mower and you built that whole book around it. And yeah, you put together a story that is so clear and so understandable that it's on the top shelf in my bookshelf on the books that I read once a year.
Thank you. Well, it's done well for where I am and all that. So my mom bought as many copies as she could afford, and then the rest are in my garage. So. No, so I brought some to leave here at Harry's, and if anybody wants one, I think there's a price on the back of it. I don't even know what it is, but I'd love for if anybody stops to buy one for that money to go right to Natives Helping Natives, and it's just a small way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful process, and that's what the book looks like.
And I was one of the first ones to get one, I think.
Yes, you were. Guys, I appreciate it.
So, parting words you want to leave for your children, your grandchildren, and those in the future? I mean, you're one of the things my takeaway from something you shared was the difference between religion and faith. And I always look at it that religion is man-made and faith is God created.
Yeah. And to add to that, there's a place for religion, depending on what that means to every one of us, can be a tool. Maybe it's a horrible analogy. I've never thought of it till just right now.
Go with it, baby.
But, the Chamber of Commerce is not the center of my business, but my goodness, it's been a great way for me to flourish in my business. All the things that come to me through, I could just speak about the Chamber because I'm a big fan. And so there's community that can be had in religion. There can be network. There can be restored faith. Every time my dad shares one of his principles, it comes right out of the Word. Like you say, well, I don't need to hear. Well, sometimes you need to be reminded of some things. So there's a lot that can come from, but religion's not the center of the plate. Faith is the center of the plate. Religion is a tool. And they're, and that's all I want to say about. I think one of the most important axioms or principles that I live by is the one thing that everyone in education, everyone in commerce, everyone in politics, all religions agree on this one thing. Here's one thing that is true that everybody agrees is that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And a different way to say that is that our current reality is a result of our best thinking. And if you don't like your current reality, you've got to change your thinking. So the short story is, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Never in any of the writings, including scripture, is it talked about your brain. It's always talked about your heart. It's not what you know, because the greatest gap in life is the gap between that which we know and that which we do. If just information alone would be enough, then we would all be skinny and rich because we've got the information. We know what to do. It's the gap between that which we know and that which we do. It's our daily behavior that makes it. So as a man thinketh in his heart, as a man really believes what's important, that's what our reality is. And so if you want to change your reality, you want to change your circumstances, you want to make a change, you got to change your thinking. And the only way to change your thinking, your beliefs, is to find the joy of being wrong. And I've spent my whole life trying to be right. And recently I discovered that truth. There can be real joy in finding out you're wrong, because if you're wrong, you're wrong. Whether you're proud of it or not, you're wrong. And so when you discover, you know what, I was wrong about that, and I can change my thinking, then I can change my reality.
It's perfect. It's funny. I'm reading a book right now, Think Again, and that's
it's a great book,
isn't it?
That's a great book.
So you hit it right. I got goosebumps because I'm a dork, but I'm almost done with it, and it hit me right between the eyes that there is a great because if you're not wrong, you're wrong.
That author is the one that wrote Find the Joy. It's not the title, but in his book, I forget the title. He's the one I learned that Find the Joy of Being Wrong.
Okay. All right. So you got everything out, you think, for now? And you're welcome back.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Because you have so much more to share. Thank you so much.
So if you're out there and you listen to Scott, which was a very pleasurable ride, it's very seldom you can get Harry and I to be quiet for an hour.
Yeah.
But if you're out there and you listen, your story is important. And we want you to share your story, because I promise you there's people out there that are going to be impacted by what you have to say, what you've been through and what you've grown through. And it doesn't have to be bad. It can be good. It's you lived through it. How did you learn to live with it? And maybe you won the lottery, and maybe you fought cancer, or whatever it could be. But contact us, because we need to hear your story. The community needs to hear your story. And
I have to add, I have to give a plug to Eric Wessel, because we were coming home from one of his treatments in Miami, and he said, I just did a podcast, and he said, I didn't want to do it. And I'm saying that because I didn't want to do this either. But if there's something there that you really think would be helpful, Eric said to me, I didn't want to do it, but I'm so glad I did. And I know this community is glad that he did.
It was an incredible, I know what I heard. I'm sure Harry heard the same thing. I shared with you beforehand at his service. So many people that I'd never seen, never knew, came up and said, we're so grateful that he got to tell a story. A family member said there were things there we never knew about him. Yeah. So I want to thank you, Harry.
Thank you for sharing. And one more thing, thank you, Seth. You always do a great job. Thank you, Seth Adams. Yes, thank you.
It's incredible what you do, and I give him praise every time he comes here and does this, that he is light years ahead of his peers, and man, you are making a huge difference. So thank you.
Let's close with this. My favorite verse is in Psalms. It's Psalm 1. It says, and I learned it as a kid in the old King James Version, so bear with me here. It says, it's written to a landscaper. You're going to hear it in a minute. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, which is principle, right? His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And here's the promise. That man will be like a tree planted by the river of water that brings forth his fruit in his season, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper.
Amen.
Wow, amen.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.